Hello everybody and welcome to the Freeze Frame Rate NewsCast. This is the place where you can get your gaming news for the week. Now, I know what you're going to say right away when you're looking at the stuff we're going to talk about down below. You're like, what happened to the Spider-Man news? There was Spider-Man news that broke yesterday. Where is it all? Well, because there's a lot of information that broke on Spider-Man because Game Informer came out with a whole article about it, I broke down that entire article in its own separate video that you can look forward to today. So once you're done with this video checking out the top news stories for the week, go run and check out that video on Freeze Frame Rate. I will have a link to that video in the video description below if that was what you're looking for, the top news story for the week. But I usually cover those bigger topics in its own video because then this newscast would be way too long and it's not gonna be good enough. So we have other stories that we're going to cover this week, and the Spider-Man one is in its own separate video, so check that one out if you are looking forward to the Spider-Man news. But we're going to get started right away. We got 4 stories this week. One of the stories is a little bit, couple weeks old, but I still wanted to bring it up for a certain reason. But first, we're going to start out with our first story, which is WB and the Shadow of War game that came out this last fall. It was a sequel to a well-acclaimed Shadow of Mordor game that came out really early in this generation. It actually came out for both platforms. I believe it also came out for the Xbox 360, the PS3, and then it also came out for the PS4 and the Xbox One. And it sold great. It did awesome. It had Game of the Year nominations on its belt. It was acclaimed as a great game, a great bringing back to the Lord of the Rings franchise, and it was a great one. So when they announced the sequel, people are really excited about this game, but unfortunately about, I want to say 3 or 4 months right before the game got released, they announced that there would be microtransactions throughout the game in form of loot boxes. Now, first of all, to no surprise for all gamers, that they were extremely upset. People are very vocal about it. I don't want to say if all gamers were upset, but just they were very vocal group of people that were very upset about this, saying that they would not buy the game because of microtransactions and that it's compromising the core component of the game. Well, and then also once the game came out, last fall, once the game came out, you could tell that the microtransactions really weren't hampering the game as much. You could still get through the game, but there was a section where there was a grind, where you really had to, where loot boxes could help alleviate that grindiness that you have to go through to get to a certain point at the end of the game. And so it only shortened the game for you. It didn't necessarily stop you from hindering you from experience the game for what it is. But happy to announce that they have announced that they will be removing those microtransactions from the game. They just announced this a couple days ago in a form of a patch that will be released in July. And in their statement, they said, in kind of quotes, I kind of broke it down a little bit. It's not an exact quote, but pretty much what they said is to restore the Nemesis system. And now the Nemesis system, if you're not sure what that is, that's kind of watch you as you fight them multiple times. They come back in the game that really felt it unique and different, which made it, but to basically, they said that to restore the Nemesis system to its true form, they will be removing microtransactions from the game. And there was a much longer quote, but basically saying they felt like the microtransactions were not doing the purpose of the true core of what the Nemesis system really was, and it really wasn't establishing the relationships between your villains and your allies, which is part of what the Nemesis system is. So it's just really interesting because it shows how truly the microtransaction was really an added component. It wasn't really the core principle of the game, which is I did a podcast with a group of people a while back, and we were talking about this issue, and this person felt like that this was a core mechanic of the game, and I felt like it was going to be more of an addition. And this is where it really shows that it is an addition of the game, and it's not really the core principle. Yes, is it interrupting with the core principle of the game, but yes, it is. It is interrupting with that, but it is not necessarily a core mechanic that It is more of an add-on. And so they basically have said we can do without it. And by taking it out, it doesn't change the core mechanics of the game. But it showed that the microtransaction also might have hurt the sales of Shadow of War, because Shadow of War really didn't get much buzz after that. It really kind of was shot down. People didn't talk about it very much. And then when the game came out, no one talked about the game post-game. There wasn't the buzz around it. And fortunately for them, Battlefront 2, EA's Battlefront 2 kind of took a huge hit in regards to microtransactions and kind of shifted the conversation to them, so Shadow of War was not under that perception of microtransactions anymore. But to be honest, if they were going to be really smart about it, they should have been doing this a lot earlier. This is very late. Can it salvage this game a bit? It could. I've kind of checked out in forums and conversations with people, because I go on multiple sites, check out multiple articles about a lot of this stuff to see what are people's reactions to this stuff. And so far it shows that the people's reactions are, I might give this game another shot, because there's no microtransactions in the game. And that was the thing that was holding them back. Plus, you can get it at a discount now. And there is DLC. Who knows, they might be in a couple months, they might announce they have a deluxe edition, which has all the DLC, or the definitive edition where they have all the DLC in it, and it'll have it without the microtransactions. But there is hope that maybe this might salvage Shadow of War's reputation, and also might salvage its sales, because it wasn't charting very high in sales in the month it was released and post months it was released. So clearly the sales weren't there. So maybe they hope this will turn it around. I think if they did this in December, when EA was getting their butt chewed about the microtransactions of Battlefront 2, people would have maybe flipped and went, I'm going to go to Shadow of War and screw you, Battlefront. I'm going to walk away. And I think that's what really would have happened if they did it a lot earlier. And it might have been even more beneficial than it is currently. But I still think it's a good thing. At least they're saying, a creator is taking a stance and saying, hey, microtransactions really doesn't do my game good. It honestly hurts my game. And it might be a sign of the times where microtransactions might be starting to fade, which is a good thing for gamers. Now, my kind of viewpoint, microtransaction is fine if the game is free. And that is because you are getting the game free. But if you're paying a $60 game, you should not be being charged microtransactions to complete the core of the game. That's not how the game should work. And I understand games cost has not gone up in a very long time. In almost 10 years, games have not gone up in price. They used to be $50 when I was a kid, probably 10, 15 years ago, a little over 10, 15 years ago, and they went up by $10 to $60 when we went to the PS3 era. But they haven't gone up in cost since. And I understand if developers I know games are costing more, but there are a lot more players now than there were in the past. So that is easily to make up their sales in the difference of the cost, because there are over 40 million PlayStation, I want to say 40 million. I think it's 40 million. Over 40 million PlayStation 4s out there. There's over 20 million Xbox Ones out there. There is over 10 million Switches out there. The market is hotter than ever. The market is bigger than ever. So costs don't need to go up because there is more people to play these games than there were when it was $60 before. So that's my view on microtransactions in general. It's a free game, you can do microtransactions. If it is a $60 game, don't charge me microtransactions, because I paid $60 for this game and you shouldn't charge me extra for it. It's not the way it should be. And it's not a good business decision, clearly, as Shadow of War is showing that it is not a good business decision to have microtransactions in your game. Also, Battlefront showed that it's not good to have microtransactions in your game. So microtransactions might be fading away, and that's good for us gamers. So on to our next story, and let me know in the comments. I'm really curious, does this change your mind about checking out Shadow of War now that it doesn't have microtransactions? I know I've had comments with a lot of people in different forums and stuff, but I really want to hear your guys' opinion. Does this change your mind about that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Now, I did talk about earlier when I said that we're going to cover a story that's a little bit older, and the reason why I'm covering this one, and I'm covering the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, that new Tomb Raider had, it's been full year since kind of the leak came out where we knew this game was coming. It was called Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And now we have an announcement that there's going to be a giant announcement on April 27th, which we will cover on this channel once that gets released. I didn't cover the trailer on this one because it was such a short teaser. It really didn't have enough Easter eggs to really justify doing a video for it. But for this next coverage on the 27th, we definitely will cover it here on Freeze Frame Rate. And then they also scheduled a release date, which is September 14th. And it'll be released for the PS4 and Xbox One and PC all at the same time. It's not going to be a limited Xbox exclusive, timed exclusive like the last Tomb Raider was, Rise of the Tomb Raider, which had a lot of controversy. I think it hurt the sales of the game, even though when they did release it, a bunch of people did buy it. But I think overall, this because of the install base of an Xbox One is not that much. I don't know if the amount Microsoft paid for that exclusive covered what the cost would have been of what they would have made if they released it on both consoles, both platforms. But the reason why I'm bringing this up also is because the movie came out, and I saw the movie. I saw the movie a couple weeks ago, and first of all, I want to say I highly recommend this movie to people. I think the actor that played Lara Croft, who's Alicia Vikander, I think I pronounced it right. I will admit that in the trailers, I at first was not sold on her being Lara Croft. I thought, this girl cannot be it. I don't think she feels like it. I don't see it. And not just like her physically. That's not what I mean. I mean like by what I'm seeing on screen, by the way she's acting, by the way they're portraying her in the trailers. I just don't see her being a Lara Croft. I'm sorry, Lara Croft. I always find it annoying when people call her Laura. And like, no, it's Lara. It's British, Lara. But I just felt like she wasn't Lara Croft. And after watching it, and then I also felt like, yeah, they're copying the first game. Like, this isn't that great. But I can say, yes, they were trying to copy the first game. But I really enjoyed the elements that they did. And the fleshed out character of Lara was absolutely awesome in this movie. They made her... this makes it, first of all, my favorite Tomb Raider movie ever, which I believe in my mind, the first Tomb Raider movie with Angelina Jolie was my favorite of all time. And then it was that the sequel was my second favorite. But this puts it back in, this new one puts it right on top. And I think it really does this because Lara is really a character that is truly fleshed out, that's truly believable. And I think that's truly what they brought to the franchise in the new series that they've been doing with Tomb Raider. It's made her feel more realistic. Obviously, yes, she's killing hundreds of people, just like Nathan Drake is, and she gets really emotional after her first kill. But still, she seemed to have more groundness, more character to her, more relatability compared to, yes, was Tomb Raider at the time in back when it came out. I can't remember the exact date. I know it was in the 90s. But when she came out, people were relating to her because that was kind of the first person that people felt like that was real in games. Well, for her in this game, for this movie, she feels so fleshed out, just like the character in this new series that they've came out with. And she thinks for herself. She's very resourceful. And when I mean she thinks for herself as well, I mean she thinks through the processes of things. And through the movie, it really shows of how she thinks when she's brought up with a roadblock of some kind. You see her process, and you see her actually think on her feet to be a smarter person and not just be, oh, I'm a superwoman automatically, I'm just going to do whatever works and it's going to be awesome. No, she actually thinks through the processes, and it justifies what she does, and it makes her look like a believable character. And I honestly loved it. I loved it very, very much. Now, they do take some tropes of a summer blockbuster and put this in this game, and they take elements from the game and put it in this movie. They don't copy the story altogether. They copy some elements of the game in here, but truly it makes it feel a great adaptation of a video game. And I think it's probably one of the best adaptations of a video game I've ever seen in my entire life. And I really hope they make a sequel. But unfortunately, the box office is bombing for this movie. So just the main reason why I'm saying this is because I really liked this movie. And for a person that was really on the fence for seeing Tomb Raider, I really implore you to check out the movie because it truly is really good. And I would say ignore the reviews of those of IGN, Kotaku, those gaming websites that are covering this movie, because they're truly covering it by like it's a game. And there's a difference. A game is tens of hours. This movie can only be covered in a couple hours. And so is unjustifiably putting it in a bad spot by trying to compare the two, which is not a comparable thing to compare because you don't have the time to develop the same way you develop with the character of Lara. And you can't do it. You just can't. It's just no way. It's like when I do my reviews. I don't score reviews because I don't want you to compare them because they shouldn't be compared. It just doesn't, that's not how it works. And especially when you compare one industry to another, they are not comparable. So please, I implore you, if you're on the fence or you're like, I'm really not sure, I'm leaning towards not seeing it, go see the movie. Hopefully they will release a sequel, or it does really well once it comes out on DVD, Blu-ray. They don't do DVDs anymore. Well, they do, but they box them in. But whatever, you know what I mean. When it comes out on streaming or Blu-ray or H4K, whatever you want to watch it on, go get this movie, check it out at least, because it's so worth it. And hopefully with that, they'll release another one because they set up a great sequel that I'm really curious on seeing what they do next with the story, because they have taken some elements and they have done some changes with some elements, which has made the movie even more interesting. So that's my only spiel about the Tomb Raider movie, that I just wanted to say, go see it because it's so worth it. Even if you're on the fence, it changed my mind about the whole movie franchise in general. So I really hope you see it. Now, getting on to back to regular gaming news, which is with the release of Sea of Thieves, it may have not had the critical success that the game with reviews has really wanted. The biggest complaint with Sea of Thieves, which I've played myself, I haven't played it long enough to really review the game, so I didn't put a review up for it, but it's fun with your friends. It is a fun experience with your friends. It's really frustrating without your friends, like any online multiplayer game. And doing everything a couple times is super fun. Going to each island to find a buried treasure and solve all the riddles, or just go get the treasure based off the map, or sword fight for a little bit, or shoot down a ship with your cannon. There is a lot to be fun with for a good 6 to 8 hours, but then after that it gets so repetitive, and that was probably the biggest criticism it has received from a lot of people, which has held the score down. But with that, even though it's had this much turmoil in regards to critical success, it has had amazing financial success. Microsoft has more like Sea of Thieves, the studio Rare has announced that they have sold over 2 million copies of the game in the first week, which makes it the fastest selling new IP for Microsoft in this generation of hardware in the Xbox One era. Which, it's great. That's great. That is. It's good that they have a good first party that's selling, but at the same time, in regards, it's really very telling of Microsoft as well and how the company is doing currently. And I've slightly covered some of this before on just my thoughts on Microsoft's strategy, what they're doing as a company right now, and I'm always critical of companies and games because I want them to be great, because the greater they are, the better it is for all of us as gamers to experience those awesome games that are before us. The great amazing creators can create amazing games for us to play. That's the only reason why I'm super critical of games. So please don't see this as me bagging on Microsoft or bagging on a certain game because it's like I'm a hater. No, I really want things to succeed. I want people to succeed, and that's why I give my personal, but then I really support that with evidence in my opinions, because I want games to be successful, and I want them to be successful. So it's just really telling of how much Microsoft has not had as much success in regards to new IPs in their first party. Because when you're looking at it, they don't have very much in regards to the first party. They got the Gears, they got the Halo, they got the Forza, and now they have Sea of Thieves. Crackdown was supposed to come out a long time ago. I mean, they did have Quantum Break that they released really early in the cycle, which had really good reviews. But I just think what unfortunately hurt that game was the poor sales of the Xbox One because of the way the Xbox One was being rolled out and released, and the way it got announced, and the thing with DRM and with used games, all that kind of stuff kind of hurt that game altogether. It just hurt it, and there's no denying that. But it just really shows that they just don't have much in regards to first party IP, and they really need to get moving on it. They really do. And they've been closing so many studios, and it's like, you got to give some games some shots, or else you're not going to be able to succeed, because people aren't going to want to buy your console. And then on top of that, I have my own issue, and I've already talked about it with the whole, what's your strategy if you're trying to combine PC and Microsoft games at the same time? It doesn't put an incentive of a person to buy your console. It doesn't. But regardless of that, the big question mark for this game overall is, even though it sold 2 million copies, how long are people going to play this game for, though? Are they only going to play it for the 8 hours and stop? It really puts a question mark to see, are they going to have the Rare team start working on DLC like now to try to make this game more fleshed out? Is this going to be another No Man's Sky where things were promised? And I would say this one was more fulfilled than the promise in No Man's Sky. But with that being said, there still isn't that much of a game here. And so if they do support it like they have with No Man's Sky, that could turn out to be a really great game, because No Man's Sky has released a lot of patches and a lot of updates, and they're free updates. And these updates have allowed this game to really grow, to sell. I mean, the game sold really well to start because of the big promises it had. And now finally the game really is kind of in the state of, where people thought this game was going to be when it was released as No Man's Sky. So hopefully Microsoft does that with Rare, with Sea of Thieves, because if that's the case, this game has amazing potential. It's got a good base. It's got a really good base to start. Now it just really needs to build it up from here to make it great. And that's my only thing. And then, but truly, like I said, hats off to Microsoft for this game. This game is a financial success. This is really great news for them to push out into the market, and that might bring more players to come in and ignore some of the mediocre reviews that they're getting. They're getting lower reviews than normal, but people can ignore that if the sales are there and they got positive news to push out into the environment. And hopefully they support, and maybe there's something at E3 that they show off for Sea of Thieves that is saying, hey, we're going to continue to support this IP, and that this Sea of Thieves is going to grow into a huge game, kind of like a games for service type thing. So to the final story of this week's Freeze Frame Rate newscast, I'm covering just something kind of a manufacturer warning for everyone who owns a Switch right now. So the Switch currently connects to their television using a docking station, which first I have to say is super expensive if you buy the first party one. It's extremely expensive. It's like $90. That's way too expensive if you want to buy an additional dock. It's also poorly made, basically because it slides between two pieces of plastic, that it contains the heat, and the heat has actually been known to bend people's Switches if they play it in the docking station for too long, which has been pretty unfortunate, and which has easy solutions to fix with it. But because of those results, people have been going to third-party accessories when it regards to the Switch. Now, the one thing I do have to say, I have to warn you right now, is if you are using a third party, and when I mean third party, it's something that's not made by Nintendo for the Switch. So if you're using some other docking station that doesn't have the Nintendo brand on it, that is actual made by Nintendo, you're using a third party product. So if you're using that third party product, I tell you, you need to stop using it now, because there's been a lot of reports about Switches breaking due to the fact of those connectors that they have, because unfortunately, apparently the Switch USB-C that it connects to, that converts it to HDMI, that goes to your TV to make it pop up on your screen, apparently the chip in there that converts it is apparently really poorly made by Nintendo, and the ones that are made for the third-party ones are actually very well made, and they don't really communicate right. And so end up your Switch breaks, and then you have to go bring it to the hardware developer, manufacturer, and they have to fix it and send it back to you. So that takes time. And then at the same time, people that have given their Switches to Nintendo to be able to fix or given to the manufacturer, sometimes they come out without their save files, like you lost all your save files. So potentially you can lose all your save files if your Switch breaks using a third-party docking station or a third-party charging station. So someone followed up with Nintendo to ask, like, hey, do you test out third-party materials before they go out into the market if they use it on your hardware? And Nintendo said no, which I totally agree. They should not be in charge of testing third-party hardware, because that doesn't have their name on it. Now, even if they went to them and said, hey, test this, why would Nintendo do that? They want you to buy their product. It doesn't matter. They're not going to say yes to that. Like, that's stupid idea. So, but I'm just telling you now, if you're using any kind of third-party product with the Nintendo Switch right now, I highly recommend you stop using it and you go back to using the main manufactured Switch materials for accessories and charging stations, docking stations, just so you don't have your Switch break, because that would be very unfortunate. And like I said before, you can lose all your save files. And for a lot of people that have spent hundreds of hours or a little over 100 hours on Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you're going to lose all that and you have to start from scratch. And I'm telling you now, you're not going to want to do that after getting to where you got. So, or Mario, spending almost 100 hours on Mario, you're not going to want to do that again. So I always do your research before you buy a third-party accessory, a third-party peripheral of some kind. Always check out the reviews on there. Check out what the manufacturer's name, see what their history is before you buy those, because you're taking a risk when you're buying a third-party product in regards to hardware, and because nobody really tests it, it's not approved by the companies because they want you to buy their product. So, telling you now, don't use your Switch if you're using a third-party docking station. But that will be it for this week's Freeze Frame Rate Newscast. What are your thoughts on these week's top stories? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this content, check out the rest of it I have on Freeze Frame Rate. And if you were thinking, where's the Spider-Man? The Spider-Man is in its own separate video they can check out right now here on Freeze Frame Rate. Go ahead and check that out. But if you like the videos, go ahead and give them a thumbs up, share them with your friends. And if you want to keep up with the content I release each and every week here on Freeze Frame Rate, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. My name is Mitch. I'm signing off saying, see you soon.